Yeah. But we didn't really, and it never worked. Now, we do have some technology to knock some things down, but not like the ICBMs that are, if we get launched a whole bunch of them.
I didn't get like a couple, like some like.
But our technology to do this isn't where we want it yet. And to be fair, the Defense Department doesn't forward me all of our new technology, so I'm not 100% sure what we got now. But no, in the 1960s we couldn't knock things down. I don't think we can do it now. So anyway, this was in the era where very few people had fax machines, but the White House, the Soviets did. And Khrushchev sent John Kennedy a fax. And it said essentially, and all of our experts read it, and they all said this is a man under ridiculous amounts of stress. And it said, let's work out a deal. Khrushchev was aggressive, but he wasn't crazy. He wasn't maniacal, right?
If it was Stalin, he would have been like.
Well, no, not even. I think we'll get to Mao might have been, and that was one reason why Khrushchev and Mao went in different directions, and I'll talk about that soon. But so they go to bed. They got this letter, and the Americans like, okay, we're gonna have a deal. It's gonna get over with. The next day, they wake up thinking the world's better. They get a second fax. But you don't have to write this down. The second, it's not gonna have an AD question. How many faxes did John Kennedy get from Khrushchev? But the second fax said, you will get your troops out of Berlin or we will destroy it. Something like that. It was really aggressive. The opposite of the nights before.
Is he bipolar?
The question, they didn't know, see, there wasn't CNN, right? The question is, many in the White House thought Khrushchev has just been overthrown by the military leaders. Because our military wanted to fight the Soviets. Their military wanted to fight us. Khrushchev was holding his military back, and Kennedy was holding our military back. And the theory was that people inside the Soviets, we were scared, had just overthrown Khrushchev, and now we have no idea who we're dealing with. So Bobby Kennedy comes up with a really interesting solution. He says, ignore the second one, just be okay with the first. People are like, well, this is a ridiculous solution, Bobby. He's like, no. They also thought, well, maybe Khrushchev is having to do this to save face in front of his military. Maybe he still is in charge. We don't know. But we can't act in a reckless manner until we have more evidence. And the Soviets were still claiming, no, there's no weapons. They're making all of this up. And so then the United Nations gets involved. Now, before I go on, I'll mention two things. We had these missiles in Turkey. They were called Jupiter missiles that were aimed at the Soviet Union, which, by the way, they were antiquated. We're going to get rid of them anyway, because we now had missiles we could shoot from over here. It's going to come into play in a little bit. Our UN ambassador was a guy named Adlai Stevenson. Where do we know Adlai Stevenson from?
Something else.
He ran for president twice against Eisenhower. Remember that? We didn't talk about him a lot because it wasn't very close. But he was our UN secretary, right? He was our ambassador to UN. He was bookish, he was very liberal, and he was seen as being kind of weak. Their UN ambassador was named Zoran, and was not seen as being weak.
Yeah.
Zoran, yeah.
I mean, that sounds like...
Zoran or Zorov? I think it's Zoran.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he kind of like was. So, none of you, I will wager, has ever turned on the TV and been like, I want to watch some of the General Assembly UN debates. But everyone did. Because at the UN, this was where they were going to have this confrontation. And it goes down to the General Assembly. The OAS, the Organization of American States, we talked about all the Latin America, the Western Hemisphere, they actually unanimously said America could do this quarantine. The OAS had never unanimously agreed on anything. But they were giving America the right to quarantine to look like we were as a Western Hemisphere together. Do you know why the Western Hemisphere said it was okay?
Well, Cuba can also fire missiles on them, right?
Yes, and also Bobby Kennedy called them and said, you will vote for this. There is nothing else. This is happening. If you want us to look in your direction the rest of your life, you're going to vote for this. There's no ifs or buts. There's no maybes and no conversation. This is a yes vote. So going into the General Assembly debates, we had all of Latin America with us except for Cuba. And so what happens is, we're talking about 1 billion people watching the General Assembly. And they're all around this big giant table, right? They all get their headphones on where people are translating, right? And Adlai Stevenson says, admit to the world now that you have nuclear weapons. And Zoran said, no, we'll wait. This is an American court. I don't have to answer to you. You know, I don't need all your propaganda. Admit right now. No, the world will see. We can wait. And Adlai Stevenson and Kennedy and Bobby, they're watching this, and like, please, Adlai, stand up. You've got to stand up for this guy, right? You can't look weak in front of this guy. And Adlai Stevenson looks at him and he says, we're going to wait till hell freezes over, but you're giving me an answer. And Kennedy's all excited, and right when he says this, he looks to his guys, and American people surround the General Assembly, and they have all these poster boards. They take off the top of the poster board, and they are enlarged photos of the U-2 pictures, and the whole world sees our evidence that the CIA had collected. Zoran had no idea, and he was like, so now the world, yes, he went, well, he's Russian, so he went, ski, right? Is that a stereotype? Right. Okay, is that a stereotype? Right. So, but none of that changes the fact that there are still freaking missiles here, and at this point, one of the Soviet steamers gets to our quarantine. And it turns around and goes back home. But there's still missiles here. And Kennedy tells his military, this was a Saturday, by Monday, if this isn't fixed, we go to war. We have to get these weapons out. We can't have these weapons become functional. Because at that point, we are under the thumb of the Soviet Union. We can't have it. Do what?
Shouldn't he have been at church on Sunday?
I'm sure he did. He actually did go to Mass. He went to Mass all the time. Do what? Oh, really? Yeah, I mean, the entire Navy was, everyone was on full alert. Everyone was battle ready. And right before, Adlai Stevenson had actually suggested, well, why don't we say in a meeting, we'll take out our missiles in Turkey if you take out your missiles in Cuba. They're like, you can't make this deal, Adlai. We'll seem like appeasers. Because every time they'll put missiles somewhere, we'll remove our missiles. And he's like, well, yeah, but we're moving our missiles anyway. They couldn't seem weak. So in the dialogue between Kennedy and his brother, they were talking when no one else was in the room, and he was like, I don't know how I can say no to this deal. What am I going to be like if I'm the guy who starts a nuclear war? Right? I mean, this is a historian. He knows what he's doing. He has a full sense of it. By the way, remember I said he was always injured to his back? At this point, he has major stress. He's taking pills for his back. He's taking injections. And he's drinking a lot. Making these decisions.
I'm Catholic.
Did you hear that? World, this is what I have to deal with. All right.
Maybe you shouldn't live in Kentucky.
My wife says the same thing. So Bobby Kennedy goes to the Soviet embassy. He drives to the Soviet embassy. He and a friend named Ken O'Donnell, who was special assistant to Bobby Kennedy, or to John Kennedy. And in the movie, I don't know if this is true or not, but in the movie, you see a bunch of smoke coming from the chimneys, which means they're burning all their records. And when you burn your records, what are you preparing for?
War.
So he walks in, and Bobby sits down with the ambassador, and he says, listen, the American ambassador, Soviet ambassador to America, he says, listen, you're going to remove your missiles from Cuba, and we're going to promise never to invade Cuba. We will also remove our missiles in Turkey in 6 months. But that will be a secret, and no one knows about it. So the only thing that comes out is they removed their missiles, and we said we wouldn't invade. Who kind of looks like they won pretty big. We did. We just played the biggest game of chicken, and Kennedy comes out looking like the man. Khrushchev comes out looking like not the man. This happened in October of '62. The elections were the next month. The midterm elections were next month. The Democrats, unsurprisingly, did pretty well because Kennedy had like a 400,000% approval rating after this. And everyone ran as I'm a Kennedy man, and they won. Kennedy died a year and a month later from this. And this is one reason why the Kennedy legacy and what he means is huge, because he died when he was very popular. Remember we said that with Lincoln, right? He died at the height of his popularity, which is sort of why there's sort of a storied legacy about him. A similar thing with Kennedy. This is how the Cuban Missile Crisis comes out. The result of this is two really important things. One of them, and this is actually Kennedy thinks is the best thing he ever did, was the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. The Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, it bans all atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons. And in the end, most of the great powers of the world signed on. It didn't reduce the number of nuclear weapons, but it was the first step in dialogue. And almost as important, I would argue, is the hotline was put in. This is a direct connection between the Kremlin and the White House. Because what was happening was, his advisors and his military were talking to their military, and Khrushchev and Kennedy just couldn't talk to each other. What would have happened if Kennedy and Khrushchev could have just talked to each other? It would not have escalated like this. Clinton was really good with the hotline. He called people all the time and fixed stuff. Get them on the phone, work this out. That didn't happen here. So the hotline is put in, and then the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty.
Clinton just text all his friends. Hey man, why are you so sad?
What, you up still? What's up? I'm totally buzzing. I don't think he really said that. And then the assassination of Kennedy. Tomorrow we will actually watch the assassination of Kennedy. There's a video. You actually see it in slow motion. It's pretty gruesome. But I talked to you about why he was in Dallas. This is the conspiracy theorist sort of holy grail, right? Is the Kennedy assassination. He was shot, we're told, by a guy named Lee Harvey Oswald, who I said before had actually defected to the Soviet Union to come back. Lee Harvey Oswald was shot 3 days later when he was leaving jail to go to a more secure location, ironically. And he was shot by a guy named Jack Ruby, who had big ties to the Mafia. There are a bunch of conspiracy theories. Some of them say the Mafia was behind it because Kennedy was so anti-Mafia. Some say it was Cuban. Some say it was American-led, CIA-driven, because Kennedy was putting some, tying up the CIA, putting some boundaries on them. Some say it was lone gunmen. The Warren Commission, and we'll talk more about this tomorrow, and I'll do diagrams and everything for you. You'll really appreciate my drawings. The Warren Commission, Earl Warren, had a commission and said that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman. In the 1970s, there was a House Special Committee on this, and they said that while there is evidence that Lee Harvey Oswald was involved, that
since we will be operating on a regular Thursday schedule, we will change classes at 9:15 to go to the second block for SSR. Again, we're on a regular Thursday schedule. We will change classes at 9:15. Thank you.
That there was somebody else. They don't know who, but that there was a conspiracy. And most likely, to be a conspiracy, there just has to be another dude who knows about it, right? And the House Special Investigation Committee said there probably was. They did mark out it wasn't Johnson, probably wasn't CIA, it wasn't Cuba, it wasn't the Soviet Union, but there are probably more people who knew about it. Tomorrow I'll do the little diagram, we'll watch a little bit of it, and then we'll see the reaction from Kennedy. A lot of the stuff that comes out of Johnson's administration were Kennedy's things that are able to be carried out.